Right, are we getting on? We on? We're on. Cool. I can never see that. So, I will wait till we get a couple of people in the chat. I did just post on Instagram. I didn't do a community tab post. I'm gonna leave it. I won't do one now. I'm gonna just double check the mic's on because last week we had trouble with the mic. I think. Let me just check. Yeah, cool. Look, sounds like the mic's on, so that's good. So that's something interesting because last week, as you may well have known, it was 6 minutes. We were on for 6 minutes, and I didn't even turn my mic on, or I had OBS somehow. Something I must have done. I don't know. I haven't a clue how I'd done it. But yeah, the mic wasn't on for some reason. That's very odd. I'm gonna get up the other chat as well because I've had some trouble with the chat recently. So I need to go and pull it up. Where are we now? Right, cool. We are there. Right then, nice. Pin chat. You can now pin a message to the top of the chat for viewers to read. Oh, that's cool. That's new. I don't know whether I'll ever make use of that because it doesn't seem like something I'll particularly make use of. But if there's some interesting chat, maybe. PvP's in. Hi there, PvP. So today I've got a couple of things to talk about. One, of course, is the YouTube memberships, and then one is I want to do a discussion on charity shops as well. And then, but what I want to do first off is talk about the YouTube memberships. I think we'll do the YouTube memberships, and then we'll do the charity shops. Yeah, PvP, you are the only viewer currently. We'll just have to see. Some people will probably turn up in a minute. I think it's been getting quite sparse, the viewership and stuff, as of recent weeks. So what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and like get someone on, try and promote it a bit more, try and get it out there, because when I had the break from doing Thursday talks, I think that kind of like just shook off a few people. Not as many people are around now, etc. So I need to try and find a way, formulate a way in which we try and get a few more people back. And I think the way that we try and get a few more people back is by actually having like some people on, some guests on each week. So what I'm going to do, actually, what I'll do is right now, because I'll forget, you see, otherwise, if I don't do it now, I'll forget. I forgot this last week, you see. I'll message a couple of people now. Bear with me, I'm just messaging a couple of people. Gary's in. Oh, hi there, Gary. I don't know whether I've seen you in the chat for a while, so it's nice to see you. Chris. Well, yeah, that's the thing as well. It is a nice day, so I would assume that a few people are in the sun, in the back garden and stuff. It'll be great to have a couple of. Sorry, I'm still messaging. I know this is so bad. I'm just here like messaging people. It'll be great to have someone on the chat though. That'd be really good. So on chat. Right, there we go. Cool. It'll be interesting to have someone. Anyway, so I don't know what I've missed in the chat now. I'm here to watch the ads. Okay, is that what people are referring to me now as the ads? Busy up your way, Gary. Where is Gary? Gary's in the UK, right? I think Gary's in the UK. Roads are chocky. Well, yeah. I mean, it's 7 now. It's not. It's not like kind of 5 or anything, but you can imagine it's still kind of a bit busy on the road. Just after 11 a.m. here. Oh, I always forget. Like, I always say this, but I always forget that you're way behind, aren't you? Like 6-7 hours behind. Also, retiring the odds cards might have lessened the audience. Yeah, I don't know. It was a necessary decision, the ads cards. It was a necessary decision. But, that's what we need to talk about anyway, membership. So, I have been setting up memberships for God knows how many weeks now. 6 weeks, so something like that. And anyway, I come to turn them on tonight. And I'm all like, yeah, I'm prepared. I'm sorted. I'm turning them on. So I turn them on. Then I realise that my entire intro video isn't conforming with what YouTube needs it to conform with to put it as an intro video on the memberships panel, right? So I turn them on and I can't turn them off again. Well, I think I can, but I don't really want to do it because it says the word disabled, and I'm worried that if I click the word disabled, it's going to just go on me and I'll have to start all over again. So I thought I won't turn it off. So I'll leave it on, but now I've got to do tomorrow a intro video. And then, so what I'm going to do is I'll do the intro video and then upload that to it. So that's the only thing I've got to do. So that was a bit annoying because I thought to myself, damn, I had got it all straight. Everything was cool. And then, boom, I got hit with that. So I've got to do the intro video tomorrow. But if you want to have a look at membership perks for now, and you can join as a member from right now if you would like, or what you can do is wait for the video. But the video, I don't think the video will be published. I think it'll just be when you click on the join tab, because I don't think I'm going to publish it. So, well, I might publish it. We'll see. We'll see on that, but I'm still debating. But yeah, it'll be on the join tab. So if you go on my channel now, like the main channel, you'll see the little join button like you see with loads of other channels, and you'll be able to see the perks and the levels and all that, and the badges that you get and the emojis and all that. But as I say, I've just not done the video yet to sort of properly, informatively give you something. And I think it's good to do a video because a lot of people, like, when we just look at the perks, it's all right looking at a list of the perks, but when you've got a video there, you can think, right, I know now, because I know more of the detail of it. Because the perks are quite, well, you look at the perks and some of them you think, well, what does that mean in relation to what I'm really going to get specifically on the channel, Whereas if I'm describing it, I can describe it in a bit more detail and give you a little bit more of directed information of, well, this means exactly what you're getting, X, Y, and Z. But yeah, so they're on there anyway. So I wanted to talk about that. I also wanted to talk about the charity shops as well, and not only the charity shops, but obviously like the thrift stores, because I know some people watch in the US. So if you are in the US, obviously I'm just talking about thrift stores here, but I want to get people's opinion on how they are at the moment, considering that now in the UK, like we've had this Freedom Day thing, whatever silly name they're calling it, for God's sake, it's ridiculous. But yeah, we've had that. What are people's thoughts on the charity shops? How do you think, like, maybe over the last 2 or 3 weeks they've been, over the last maybe even 2 or 3 months have been? Because, I mean, I've only just got back into reselling the last 4 weeks or so. 4 weeks or so. And I found it really good. I have to say, like, I found the charity shops really good. Now, I don't know whether that's a consensus thing, whether other people are going to say to me, oh, yeah, I found the charity shops really good as well. I've been able to get really good stuff. Maybe it's to do with COVID, people having a clear out after they have obviously, been in for so long, etc., and they want to have a clear out. So I want to know from people kind of what their experience is of it, and whether it's been good, whether it's been bad, what the experience has been over the entirety of COVID, because I've been out to the charity shops here and there during the entirety of COVID, when they've been open, of course, and it's been really weird. A lot of the time it's not been very good, but then now, towards the tail end, for some reason, especially since I've maybe been going around the charity shops a little bit more, so obviously there's that as well, that that comes into it. But certainly recently, they're really good, so I want to see people's opinions on that and get some ideas of that. Michelle's in. Hi there, Michelle. My main charity shop put prices up. Haven't been there in over a month. Right. Yeah, that's interesting, actually, considering... did I say hi to Antoinette? I don't know. Maybe if I didn't say hi to Antoinette, I'm sorry. I'm saying it now. Yeah, but that's interesting, because I don't think any of my charity shops have, specifically put prices up. There's one... there's a new one in my local town, which is a vintage shop, and obviously since I've been away, I didn't know about it or anything. It's kind of changed. It's weird. It's the same people, but yet it's a completely different thing. It's instead of it being a normal charity shop where you pay £1 for something or £2 for something, oh yeah, pick it up, I'll make some money on it. It's one of these vintage boutique charity shops now. Same company and everything, but just really high prices. Brilliant stuff in there. Brilliant stuff. Stuff you wouldn't even find at the car boots. Great, the really good antique old, gas tanks and all the rest of it. Signs, mirrored signs and all the rest of it. Brilliant sort of records in there. Loads of wonderful, vintage toys. I'm talking the die-cast stuff, a really good old die-cast stuff. There was some vintage train stuff in there, tons of vintage books, good stuff in there. But just obviously not at all the prices. The prices are ridiculous. They are vintage boutique, antique centre type prices. But that's the only one really that's high prices. The rest, to my surprise, have been okay. Because you would think that, wouldn't you? You would think, well, maybe they're going to put prices up because we've got all this stuff. We've not really been selling that much over COVID. So what's going to happen? They're obviously going to put prices up a little bit, because if they don't put prices up a little bit, then it's going to mean that they're not going to be able to get that money back that potentially they lost over COVID. With charity shops, I suppose it's not so bad because they're not really paying the same overheads as another store. So you could imagine that other stores would put the prices up, and I don't know. I've not really. I wouldn't say I've noticed that in the supermarkets or anything particularly myself, but there's maybe certain shops that have done without me knowing. But certainly charity shops, maybe they are going to be okay. Maybe they are not going to put the prices up too much because they've not got those overheads there, and maybe they're going to think, well, actually, if we keep the prices fairly okay, that might attract some more people, and we might end up getting more sales anyway because people are kind of getting back to the shops a little bit. I think it's actually good as well to comment on a couple of things that I've noticed. Because I went in a charity shop and spoke to one of the managers there, and I also noticed something from is it Shell's World now? Is she called Self now? And I noticed something on her Instagram as well from what it was like a newspaper or something. PvP says TV shirts went crazy high. I used to buy concert tees from about $2.99 to $12.99. Now they want $14.99 to $20. Wow, That's quite an increase, isn't it? Well, I mean, a lot. Like for example, if you're saying one used to be $2.99 and now they're $14.99, that's a big increase of those. On that price there, $12-13 price. That's crazy. But yeah, so I'll talk a little bit about these two things I've noticed. So first off, I was in the charity shop yesterday, and I was speaking to this charity shop manager. I've known him for, God, I must have known him for 4 years now. Now, I've not seen him in about a year because of COVID and because of being at university. But we've had some nice little chats since I got back because we're very much friends as well. It's not just like sort of I go in and he'll give me stuff and all that. It's not just that. It's more that we are like friends as well. So, so I was talking to him and he said, you know what? It has been quite quiet around town, and I noticed that as well when I came in the first couple of times, and specifically one time as well on a Tuesday when I went in. I found that it was a lot quieter than I was used to in my local town, and so anyway, I was talking to him and he said that. Now he didn't just say that though. He said he thinks that maybe, and it's a good point. He thinks that maybe people aren't going to be spending the money because you see they've had this COVID and they've got all this uncertainty in other aspects of their life. Obviously, maybe financially, but also as well other aspects of their life, health, work, or yeah, well, whatever. You could name about 100 different things, different points of uncertainty in life at the moment. And so that, as well as it being financial, that could obviously bleed into the charity shop, and that could say, well, people aren't just coming out in general. But I mean, then I suppose you could make the argument, couldn't you, that, well, if they're going to spend anywhere, they're going to spend in charity shops because they're the cheapest places. So if they're going to be quite frugal, then that would lend themselves maybe more to go into charity shops, not less. But then again, we could say, well, maybe people are just not spending at all or hardly any, just on what they need, basically, just on going to the shop for food and little bits here and there and stuff like that. And maybe they're saving up for a holiday or something like that because people really want to go on a holiday, but maybe they're not just buying odds and ends here and there when maybe they used to. Maybe they're not buying like little bits of luxury goods here and there. Maybe they're just spending on one luxury item, like, for example, something like an experience or a holiday. But then again, in another side of it, it doesn't make sense, does it? Because people are, I've noted on numerous occasions on social media, everyone's saying, oh, well, I've saved up a bit of money because obviously we've not been going out, getting meals all the time because you can't, because the bloody restaurants have been closed and the pubs have been closed and all that. So it is weird because it's a weird situation because in a sense, some people got more money because they've been saving money there, but then yet people are still being a bit timid with the spending, and I think it's so different. I don't think you can just say that there's one particular thing at the moment which sort of like everybody collectively is going towards. Of course, there's always going to be some level of collective sort of gravitation, where the collective is gravitating towards a certain thing. But I think it is kind of a little bit split as well, in which certain people, and of course everyone has different circumstances, but certain people are just generally playing it differently and working with their finances a little bit differently. And maybe that does reflect the kind of ambiguity of the situation, and the fact that different people are doing different things represents this kind of randomness and ambiguity that COVID has given us as a kind of society and as a world as well. I don't know, but it's interesting to think like how these things from charity shops, and just that kind of people spending and spending habits are not only being reflected, for example, on the high street, but being reflected on a more wider scale as well. That's very interesting to me. And of course there is kind of there's quite a lot of psychology in that actually, not just some, but it is quite interesting from that point of view. It's kind of where business, in a sense, like business and politics and retail and all that combine with psychology, consumer psychology and things like that. But not only that, I mean, even personality psychology and depth psychology comes into it as well. So let me just check what we've got in the chat here. I think I've only missed a couple of bits, so that's okay. They used to have small electricals and blank media. Never seen that stuff for the past year. I asked staff where they moved it to, and they don't seem to know. Wow, yeah, that's weird. I tell you though, the electricals and stuff. The media is not so. I've been okay with the media. It's not been too bad. But the electricals for me, I've really struggled. I've noticed that the last few weeks in the charity shops. Of course, like I've got, the N64 controller and the Game Boys and stuff, which comes into electricals by way of video games. But other things, I don't know. VHS players and stuff, which I used to sell a lot of. I used to pick them up a lot. Kind of both, I'd say from the charity shops, because there was one charity shop I used to go in quite regularly that I'd get some VHS from it, like VHS players. So it wasn't just the car boots and other little bits and bobs of electricals and stuff. And I haven't really seen that many of them. Whenever I've been in the charity shops, it's been quite stale. When I've looked at the electrical sort of shelves, and I'm talking the shelves where you've got all sorts of random electricals on. You've got toasty makers, you've got hair curlers, you've got DVD players, you've got speaker systems, etc. Those kind of shelves where it's all a mishmash of everything. Well, I mean, some people, let's say in the US, they might have more of them or they might not have them, but certainly in the UK we have those kind of shelves. And so I've been on those shelves and I look and it's like, it's quite stale. And sometimes in the past it hasn't been like that. It has been there's been things that you can pick out and think, oh, I can make 50 quid on that. Let's say, for example, a DVD player or VHS player or whatever it may have been. Whereas there's not, it just doesn't seem to be that much. It seems to be quite stale. But then again, I have to kind of admit that I'm not really looking intently for that sort of stuff. I'll look at it. I'll go, I will, every time I go into a charity shop, I will browse that aisle. But I'm not looking for it. I'm not specifically thinking, I've got to get this. I've got to have these specific items. I just think, well, if they're there, they're there. But saying that, I haven't necessarily seen those things. So, I think that kind of the electricals, it's possible. It's possible that, I don't know, for whatever reason, they're not selling them. They're not getting much fresh stuff in. I'm not sure. Maybe people are being more, as I say, this kind of frugal mentality. People are maybe keeping their electricals for longer or something like that. Or maybe it's a case that people are selling them via other avenues. I mean, that's something we've not thought about. I mean, I know I've touched upon it briefly in other videos. But it could be the case that people are selling them through eBay more. I mean, you see, I've seen definitely over the past couple of years, people are more gravitated towards eBay, personal sellers. We have all these ads on the radio, on the well, I'm not sure about the TV because I don't really watch TV, but I'm sure they've probably had a few ads on the TV as well, directed at personal sellers. And so we do have these ads on the radio, and I forget that one that, there was an ad on the TV. Yeah, of course there was an ad on the TV. It was that one, and I think, I wasn't sure quite how to take this, because it was an ad where it was kind of, I don't even know how to say this without sounding terribly posh or anything like that, but I'm not meaning to say that I'm posh or anything. I would say I'm quite working class, really. But it sounded very working class, the advert. It sounded very common. That's what I want to say. And it was like, oh yeah, my mate Susie got this on da-da-da-da. And I thought to myself, well, hang on, eBay. Have your marketing team really done you well there? Because, yeah, okay, if that's how you want to market your service, as maybe they're trying to go for, well, we're inclusive of everyone. It might be that. It might be that. Then go for it and put that advert on. But I think they're tailoring that market to a very, very niche, or, well, not niche dynamic, but a certain class of people, shall we say, rather than being more expansive and including everyone within it. Instead, they could have, and of course they've attempted this many times in the past with adverts and all the rest of it, and so that might be why they've concluded to do it this way, etc. I don't know. But if they included, let's say, just a family, let's say, between working and middle class, not necessarily middle class or upper middle class or anything, because then you're excluding other people and others. So if you did it between working class and middle class, nice family, etc., in a fairly standard home, all that, then then you've got a right old expanse, because you can cater for the middle class, you can cater for the slightly more upper class as well in that, and you can cater for the working class. Whereas, if you've got this kind of more very like, oh yeah, Susie, I got it down the market type vibe, you are then marketing your service as that. And that has a certain presentation. And if you're fine with that, if that's your market, brilliant, go for it. You market it to hell like that. But I don't think eBay is that, you see. I don't think that's necessarily a brilliant move to market it as that, you know. But maybe they need to. Maybe they need to market it like that, because maybe they need to tap into that market. I don't know. But it seemed a bit kind of like, well, isn't eBay shooting itself in the foot here by like marketing it in that way rather than in a more holistic way? You know, going directly for that. It's like the same as if they marketed it only for the real upper class, right? So you say like, oh well, you see an advert and we're in some sort of manor somewhere, all the rest of it. We're in some sort of manor, and there's this guy saying, oh yes, I sold this on eBay yesterday, and I got this £50 note here. Gertrude, you know, he's shouting to his wife, Gertrude, look at this £50 note that I got for selling this item on eBay. Yes, I sold that antique dog over there. Yes, it's brilliant, isn't it? You see, so that's going to alienate so many people if you market it like that. Same as if you market it as, oh yeah, Sharon, I got it down the market. It's going to alienate so many bloody people. What are you doing, man? What are you doing? You know, it's like, market it in the middle. There's a very, very good phrase in Buddhism, and no, it does not apply here, but I am going to shoehorn it in because it's interesting. But you market it, you go down the middle way. You go down the middle way, which is, you know, just this kind of in between this kind of down here or up here or however you want to categorize it, because we could quite easily categorize it as working class above the upper class, because let's face it, a lot of upper class people can be snobbish, and so then you could put the posh people below the working class in a stance of moral or anything like that. But whatever way you want to define it, however way you want to order it, these are more of the, let's say, these two sides, and then you've got the middle here. So you bring these two together by unison in the middle way, and then you know, oh right, then people come together in that, and then you get more of a holistic brand marketing. But anyway, I don't know what I was talking about before that. I don't know, but anyway, I'll have to have a think now because I probably forgot. eBay never runs ads here anymore. Really? They don't run ads? But that's odd. Yeah, but oh, I don't know what I was bloody talking about. I haven't a clue. I forgot. I used to make good money on sealed cassette tapes if they were high grade. Oh, the sealed cassette tapes and the sealed VHS tapes. So you could get sealed VHS tapes, and then you could get the little sealed cassettes in like the things of 5 or Could you get them in 10? No, maybe you could get them in like 5 or something like that. Maybe 10, but normally in 5. I think there was a brand that did do 10, but you could get 10. It was a little black, and I forget the name of the brand, but it was a little pack where it was blue on the sides, and it had like a little red strip on it, and I forget the bloody brand, but you could do them in 10s. Like, literally, the manufacturer would put them in 10s. And it wasn't the best brand, but you used to be able to make some money on them. You also used to make some money on the TDK VHS tapes, and they were what were the 240s? I think you could make a bit of money on the 120s as well, but the 240s were good, and you could send them into Amazon. And I think at one point I was getting, I want to say it was as high as $12.99 for one tape, and that was like the peak. That was like the height of it. But then for a lot of the time, I was getting between about $7.99 and $9.99. Now, if you could pick them up for what, a quid, 50p, etc., then you're doing bloody good, because you could just send them to FBA, put them in a box, label them up with your little what do we call it on Amazon? Is it an ASIN? ASIN. And I swear there's another name for it though. But you label them up and then you ship them off. And then when you ship them off, they do all the work, of course, as you know, with FBA. And you sit and put it, you know, you've got some money there. And you could sometimes pick them up from the car boots. You'd sometimes pick them up from the charity shops here and there. You could get them in the packs of 3. And the packs of 3 were brilliant because you could, or the packs of 5 as well. And I think the packs of 3, or was it the packs of 5? It might have been the packs of 3 though. I was getting like $29.99 or $34.99 for a pack of 3. So it's bloody brilliant, because you think, well, you pick them up for 3 quid. I mean, there was a lot of times that you could get them for 3 quid, maybe 5 quid at the charity shop. And, you know, whack them in, $29.99, $34.99. Brilliant. You know, you don't hardly have to do anything, brand new and sealed. So yeah, the cassette tapes and the VHS were great. I absolutely used to love picking them up. Like they were one of my favourite things to pick up. My favourite things to pick up have always been, as I've mostly said, like I've said for a long time, brand new and sealed stuff. Like anything brand new and sealed, and yeah, they're just brilliant. It's just so easy, because it's like board games or Lego or the VHS stuff or whatever. It's absolutely brilliant. I sold my old used metal grade tapes for $10 each on eBay a few years ago. Metal grade tapes? What are metal grade tapes? I don't know what metal grade tapes are actually. I don't know. Just sold a Christmas house tin gold musical box. Yeah, but you know what we say? In summer, some people have Christmas in summer. I don't know why. I think it's some sort of thing where they can't have them at Christmas. Like, some people can't do Christmas at Christmas, so they end up doing it in summer. So it could be, and it usually is like July, I think. I think it's July that people have said to me that people do it in. I don't know what day. Maybe it's different for everyone. Maybe just it's based on the family. Like, for example, oh, well, we're just going to have it here or whatever day. You would imagine that maybe some people do it on the 25th. So some people just do it instead of the 25th of December, they'd do it on the 25th of July or the 25th of June. But yeah, I've noticed that a lot of people sell stuff. A lot of people sell Christmas stuff in June, July, because a lot of people do have it then. And it would be interesting actually to talk to someone, talk to a couple of people, because I know a couple of people who sell a lot, like in sort of this time of year, Christmas stuff, and it'd be interesting to actually chat to them about why it really occurs. Because obviously, as I said, I've chatted to them before a bit, and like people have said to me, well, it's because people can't do it at Christmas. But I wonder why people can't do it at Christmas. I wonder why it's the case. It's interesting because I don't know. I swear I've heard something about if people are like in the army or something at Christmas, or I don't know, or something happens at Christmas where they go away, they can't like actually do Christmas. You know, I don't know. It's really odd. It is really odd. You know what? I really want a cigar. I've been wanting a cigar for about 4 days now, and I'm like, I don't want to smoke one because of the heat, and I'm just I'll wait till the heat's gone down because I want to like enjoy a cigar on a cooler day rather than having it on today. Not that really it would matter. I mean, smoking a cigar to me doesn't really make you hotter or anything like that, but I want it on a nice like tomorrow. I might have a cigar. I've got cigars over there, and I keep them over here. And I'll show you. I've got some. Where's my other one here? Got this one I've had for about bloody 2 years, and I've not even opened it. Oh, it's even crushed there actually. God damn it. God, I've literally had that one for ages. These two I got the other week. That's a nice one. I like the really long ones, you know, cool long ones. Because you can obviously smoke them for a lot longer. I really want, and so I'm like, I'm back and forth. I keep thinking to myself, should I just smoke one? Should I smoke one? No, I won't smoke one. I'm not doing it. I won't do it. Then I'd say, so I'm going to wait for a cool day and I'm going to smoke one, and I'll enjoy that. Because I've not smoked in 2 weeks, and that's good for me. That's good for me. I mean, it sounds like I'm addicted to smoking now. But no, that is good for me. 2 weeks is good for me, so I'll take it. 2 weeks. I'll take 2 weeks. So I'll give myself a cigar. Christmas in July was made. Really? Oh my God! Christmas in July was made up. Jesus, I didn't think it was made up. Oh my God. Metal grade are the highest grade tapes. Oh, I'll have to let me type them in now. Metal grade tapes. Oh, God, it's getting hot in here. It's because of that light, I think. Cassette tape types and formulation. Metal particle compact tapes. Oh, nice. I've seen those before. Yeah. I know the ones you mean. It's because I didn't really grow up with cassette tapes though, so I kind of did a bit, but not. VHS tapes, yeah, but cassette tapes. I mean, my dad had a Walkman that I think I used a little bit, but not much at all. I was more like, those very, very little MP3 players that everyone used to have. You know, the little ones with a little screen, tiny little digital screen on them, and it would read it off like that, read the track off, and you could maybe, I don't know how many songs you could store on them, maybe like 30 or something. I only had about 30. Maybe you could store a bit more than that on them, but there was probably ones out there that you could store 100 on or 200, but yeah, I remember, and I went to, it might have been Greece, or it wasn't there, it was like somewhere like Italy, and I remember I was walking down this street, and I had my little, because I used to have the Beach Boys on this, this it's MP4 player, not an MP3 player, on this MP4 player, and I was walking along with it, and I had those, they still have them actually, and people wear them, but I don't like them. They have the the earphones that go round your ear, that hook onto your ear, and so I used to have them, and I used to love those earphones where you used to hook them onto your ear, but I'm not a fan anymore. Maybe it's because I just wore them forever. I've worn them for ages, but yeah, I used to have California Girls and Good Vibrations on this little MP4 player walking around. I used to love it on holiday because I used to just put that on, But I mean, I've always been very, very. I probably have spent more time in my life listening to music than I have actually spent talking to other humans. I probably have, because whenever I was on holiday, I would just when I was sunbathing, I'd just listen to my MP4. And this is going back all the way since I was about 12 or 13 years old. I'd listen to my MP4. These days, I have my AirPods, and I listen to my AirPods probably, minimum 3 hours a day. And I do not spend at all that speaking to people in a day, unless I'm at university and speaking with people, meeting up and all the rest of it with various different people. Then I might. But certainly when I'm at home here, no, I've never spent that. So, and that's minimum 3 hours, 3 hours a day. So, it could be 3, 4, 5 hours a day. So that is bizarre to think. I'm gonna end up dying, and this will be the case. I'll end up dying having spent more time listening to music than talking to people, and I feel quite comfortable with that. I don't feel as if, because you would expect that after a statement like that, after thinking about that, about what it means, that you've spent more time just listening to music than speaking to people. You'd think you'd kind of question yourself, and you think, well, am I living my life correctly? But I just think, no, actually I'm pretty fine with that. And I think it's just because I'm very introverted. If I was more extroverted, hang on, yeah, let me reconsider. But because I'm so introverted, it's like I'm cool like that, I'm cool like that. And I can be very extroverted as well, but only at times when I meet up with people, and let's say I've planned that I'm meeting up with someone tomorrow, and I know that potentially that's obviously I'm going to be doing that. Then I meet them, and then I can be as extroverted as hell. I can just go. I can be crazy extroverted. So much so that people might, although I have asked people about this, but might mistake me for an extrovert. But the people who I have asked, who I have I've asked people who I've just met. I've asked people before who I've just met. I've met them for an hour, and in my eyes I've been quite extroverted, and yet they still say, no, I think you're an introvert. So I don't know. I must give off kind of like introvert vibes anyway. I don't know why that quite is, because it is weird, because it's kind of, my personality isn't what you would typically, let's say, consider reserved or introverted in a sense. In many ways it is, but in many ways it isn't. So it's interesting. But no, oh God, music. Just listen to oh yeah, oh God. When I find the right people to chat with, Jesus, I can just talk to them for hours. Like I can just talk, and they can tell me things that are like, it's kind of like this chemistry, we all have this chemistry, don't we, with people. And if you find someone that has that connection and that chemistry, then immediately you can just talk for hours, and you can just absorb in what each other's saying, and you get all of these brilliant ideas come up, and you think, oh yeah, I thought that as well, and that's the same as what I had this idea before, and I'm so glad that you've had that idea as well, and what do you think of this idea, and all the rest of it. And then they say something, and it happens that you click on that, and it's so good, because that's kind of that really, to me, is the richness and the pinnacle of friendship, in terms of that being able to click. You see, because yes, there's other aspects to friendship. For example, I believe honesty is a huge aspect to any good friendship. The friendships that I've cultivated at university, to a better degree, have all been formed on actually quite, we could say in a way, quite assertive, or even, I think brutal is slightly too much of an exaggerated word, but somewhat assertive honesty where we are literally going at each other. We are saying, look, hang on, no, I don't think that's right for you. I don't think you're doing the right thing here. I don't think that this is what should be the case. And the friendships that have cultivated to a better degree are exactly those friendships where I'm actually saying to people quite honestly, and they're saying to me, hang on a minute, no, this is not how it is. This is not how it should be. You're doing something wrong here, or you've got this wrong here, or whatever. Whereas the friendships that haven't been cultivated to that degree haven't either involved that honesty, or that they haven't got to the level of that honesty because the connection wasn't there to begin with. So there wasn't any connection. So I think that this kind of connection is like this kind of fundamental, maybe the pinnacle of friendship is the wrong word. Maybe what is a better conceptualization is it is the kind of foundations, or it's the platform in which to slowly build a stronger foundation of friendship upon. Because when you get that connection with people, whether it be similar interests or what, mainly similar interests, of course, that's one of the main things you can have. But when you get that, then there's something, and it's not just similar. It's kind of like ideological outlook on the world, experiences, shared outlooks from those experiences specifically, etc. And then once you've got that kind of chemistry, then you get all these positives and all these brilliant ideas that come from that friendship, then you get a little bit of more reality with the friendship, and you have all these few little disagreements and stuff. Generally, actually, if your outlook's very similar, you might actually sustain quite a kind of, you could say, a sort of honeymoon period in a friendship for quite a while, and you just have little disagreements here and there. Then there's a few disagreements and stuff, and then we start to get into this realm of honesty, because we've had all of this kind of ideas and all of this connection and all of this chemistry and all of these little disagreements here and there, and we have this opening up between people as well, because that's an important stage of friendship. And again, that could be in the early stages of friendship. It doesn't need to be in the later stages, but the early stage of friendship, we have this kind of back and forth of opening up of past experiences and negative experiences and stuff. And if there's a connection there, then that can be very, very enhancing, and very, very enriching for the friendship. And then we get into this kind of realm of, because we've got some weight in the friendship now, then we start to be honest with each other. And then we start to, I don't like that. I don't like what you did there. I don't think that's living by who you are. Now, that is a very, very high level of friendship. It's not just oh, well, I don't like what you did there because I'm pissed off personally. No, it's not that. And it's not that the other person is pissed off personally with me. This is a very, very differentiated and high level of friendship, if you can get to this. Namely, it's the ability to put aside your personal feelings for the good of that person, in the sense of who you know them to be and who they could potentially be in the future, but who they're not exercising right now because they've made a particular decision that misaligns them, that de-aligns them, shall we say, with the potential of who they could possibly be. And that isn't necessarily a personal thing on my part, not necessarily my personal feelings. It's more so what I can see the nature of that person, and what they know the nature of that themselves to be, and that they're actively not aligning to that. And so then the friend steps in and says, look, I don't think this is you. And that may be a personal feeling, because what can happen is that your personal feelings towards that person can be the same as let's say the alignment to their nature. I know that's I've not explained that in the greatest way, but for example, you could really feel for that person, and you should do if you're really connected to them. You should really feel for that person as they are as an individual. Now, if they're not aligning with themselves as an individual and they're going off the course, your personal feelings towards them will be the same as obviously what they should be. And so therefore, when you're honest with them in that directed way, oh, I don't think you're doing this right, it is your personal feelings, but also it's your personal feelings expressed in the potentiality, in seeing the potentiality for who they could be in the best form of themselves possible. And that's what I think friendship is about. You know, Peterson has this idea of friendships being, and I agree with this slightly, but I also kind of agree that I also think there's a deeper, I think the way that I've just defined friendship seems deeper. What he says is he talks about kind of this idea of, you know who your true friends are with the people who you can celebrate with. Honestly, they will celebrate honestly with you when you've done something good, when you've had a big success. Like, let's say I've finished my degree, right, and I've got a 2-1 or I've got a first or whatever it is, and people, that my true friends will come forward and say, right, let's go out on the town, let's get a few beers, let's get a few drinks, let's celebrate what you've done, right? And yeah, that to me, yeah, okay, those people could be your true friends. But also, if you think about that, like, if you really think about that, maybe some people just want to go out for a drink. Maybe some people just want to celebrate just to celebrate. You know, it might not be fundamentally. Now, it very well could be fundamentally. And it might likely be that 80 or 90% of the time. But those people are really your true friends. And they're really trying to help you celebrate and elevate your success and be really good friends in that regard. But maybe 10 or 20% of the time, maybe with these people who are maybe just on the outskirts of your friendships, those people might just be celebrating to celebrate. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're your true friends or anything. Like, they could just be. So I think this kind of more piercing honesty towards the individuality of that person and being able to see their nature and know their nature from numerous conversations with them and kind of direct them towards where they are as an individual and really the potential that they have inside themselves, that seems to be more in line with the truth of friendship. Now, it's not necessarily directing people with force, but what it is it's putting your feelings out there, and it's putting your feelings about what you feel they're capable with and they align with out there within the honesty. They can make up whatever mind they want about it. If they really want to just not take any of that, and they think that the things they're doing at that moment are aligning with who they are, then yeah, sure, they can go off and do that and think that that's all that. Probably they might make some follies if it is the case that it is not kind of the right path for them. They might make some follies, they might do a few bad things, and then they'll get into a situation that, oh God, I need to fix this, and then they end up it just about ends up working out, and then they go back to that alignment again, and then we think, hang on, no, that person was right, and then by that point you might not be friends anymore, because it might have got to the point where actually you can't cope with that person. Like, they might have really gone off, because you could say, well, you could take this to the extreme and make the argument for someone who, let's say, they're an intellectual person, they're at university, they're doing all the studies, you really love them as a friend, of course, they love you as a friend, and you're having great intellectual discussions, and suddenly someone comes in and tempts them with a few drugs and all the rest of it, and they become this kind of darker personality. You know, they're a bit more isolated. You know, whatever, smoking weed, doing doing cocaine, uh, God, MDMA, whatever bloody buggering drugs go on these days. Well, a lot of the psychedelics have come back in fashion now. Seems to be that what happens, it's like bloody the fashion, innit? Where the 70s, what is it, the 50s came back in the 70s. It's kind of like that, the same with bloody drugs, where it's like, oh, right, so all the bloody psychedelics are coming back in now and all the rest of it. But anyway, so that's all that. So they go down that path, and that might be the extreme circumstance, and that person, you might not be able to be friends with that person anymore after a certain point. And then they come back and they align with themselves again, and maybe you meet them by happenstance at some point down the road, and then you see that they're not aligned, and you see that they're actually okay now, but they weren't aligned with who they were, and you're grateful for the fact that they've seen it. And people do that all the time. Like, you know, people are like, you know, when they have, you go to school reunions, or you'll be walking down the street and you meet someone randomly after 10 years or something. People always do that. And then they always get this shock. It's either a brilliant shock. Normally, it's either a brilliant shock or it's not so great shock. Or maybe it's just oh, right, they're pretty much the same. But sometimes you'll get this shock, oh, they've done really well for themselves. And you'll go home and you'll talk to someone at home and you say, oh, you know that person I was friends with 10 years, they've done brilliant for themselves. Or, oh, they've not done, you know, and all this. And this doesn't necessarily have to be solely involved with money. It could be other things. It could be their demeanour. It could be their personality. It could be the way they present themselves. It could be all these different things, you know. But the good thing is, if you are good enough friends, then the weight of the words from the other person means something. And if the weight of the words from the other person means something, it means that you will listen to them. And if you listen to them, then it means you have a chance at alignment. And then if, let's say, I listen to my friend and he or she says to me, or he or she / non-binary individual, just to be politically correct, but God, it's getting superfluous with all these gender terms. I will definitely say that. Anyway, he, she, whatever, they say to me, oh, you know, Adam, I don't really think, I think you're eating too much at the moment. I don't think that's good for you. I don't think that that's really, you know, necessarily a good part of your behaviour at the moment. And I mean, this is quite a superficial thing, really, because it's not as deep as maybe some other things we could say. But, I mean, certainly it can lead to some depth, and it can certainly have psychological weight to it and all the rest of it. But they say that. Then I'm going to think to myself, well, actually, I really do respect what this person says, and maybe I'm going off a bit here. And then so you take that into consideration and you try and get out of those habits. I mean, that, as I say, that's a habitual thing. That's kind of a less deep thing. But maybe we could state the argument of a better example would be me being too aggressive, you see. That would be a good example. I'm living too much in the Jungian shadow, for example, right? So, oh, you know, Adam, you've just been too assertive recently. You've just been too assertive. And I don't like that, you know, I don't like that about you. I think you need to change that. And I mean, I had that at university. I did a brilliant example. I had this at university. I was being quite assertive for a time. And people said, you know, you're being a bit assertive these days, you know. I don't know about this. I don't think this is exactly who you are, you know. But anyway, so then you orient yourself. And if you're good, if you're psychologically attuned, you orient yourself. If you're not, then you don't orient yourself. And then you go down that path, and then you get possessed, let's say, by these ideas. By the idea of assertion, by the idea, that instinctive mode of being of aggression or assertion or whatever it may be. Whatever. I mean, you could even say, you could say it in the other way. someone is really, really nice, and they've become like this really, really intolerably nice person for some reason. I don't know what it is, but they maybe weren't like really, really nice at some point, but suddenly they've started to get really, really nice with people, and they've lost a bit of a backbone for some reason. Now, normally it doesn't work like that. Normally people generally don't have a backbone and then learn to grow a backbone. But, it's just an example. So, let's say in that case, then, you think, hang on a minute, you become you're being a bit too nice all of a sudden. And I've done this, and this is what I do with people. People normally do it the opposite way for me. People normally say to me, oh, you sometimes be a bit too honest or whatever. But then, for me to other people, I'm always saying to them, and I've said it to many people at university, oh, you're bloody too nice. You're just always nice all the time. You can have it that way, and you can kind of not align with quite who you are, you see, because you can be too nice, you can be too nasty at times, you can be too intellectual. I suffer with that one a lot of the time. You can be too emotional. That's another one. You can be too greedy. You can be too narcissistic. Again, another one I've suffered with, more than my fair share. You can be too bullish. Not just bullish in a sense of aggression or anything like that, but you can just be too over exuberant, and you could be too sort of animated. You know what I mean? You could be like you're on speed or something like that. So in that sense, or you could be too antisocial, or then again, as I say, coming back to that kind of more extroverted, exuberant idea, you could be too social. You could be like, let's go out, so you could be too much that way. So it's all about, holding these things in, and it's hard. Not holding them in, but rather moving them around yourself in a contained personality, which is expressing them to the degree that they require expressing without too much of this or too much of that. That's the fundamental task. Now, that is a task for the lifetime. That isn't a task for first 20 years of life, first 40 years of life even. I know that Jung would say, well, come 35, your animus will be in a better position. You'll be a bit more integrated. Come 35, your shadow will be a bit more integrated. So you're probably, getting there. Well, yeah, but it's not exactly like that. And Jung would never say it is exactly like that as well. These kind of typical, let's say, animus ideas within Jungian psychology. And they are animus ideas because whenever we dogmatize, or we kind of say, well, there's these specific things in a certain ideology that are sort of ideas that are more kind of regimented, shall we say. Like, for example, the idea that within the Jungian tradition that unconscious individuation or conscious individuation starts to become a process at 30, 35 and beyond. But it's not really that. It's not really that, because that's dogmatizing it in a kind of, well, it's exactly around that, And as I say, Jung would very much agree that it's a process, and it's a kind of not, regardless of any concepts of Jungian psychology, of individuation, of integration, of any of these different things that I always mention, regardless of any of those concepts or that kind of world, shall we say, the being too emotional or the being too this or too that, you can conceptualize them in many, many different ways. And you're always talking about the same experience, but you just conceptualize it in a different manner, and in a slightly subtler way, or a slightly different way. And so this process is, let's say, a kind of realization and balancing of the personality in many different aspects takes the lifespan, not 20 years, not 40 years or 35 years or 30 years or whatever, but the entire lifespan to be moving with, to explore, to understand, to grow, to develop, to remind yourself when things are too emotional, when things are too this, when things are too the other, when you're over this way, when you're over that way. And it's fine to be over this way or over that way for a little while, because what you can notice is when you are over this way for a little while, or you are over the other way for a little while, you start to become understanding of that part of your personality more. So imagine, let's say I'm too assertive, or I am too emotional, or whatever. Well, if I'm too emotional, I'm too assertive, assertion can come into emotion, but when I say, let's say I'm too emotional, I'm too emotional in a more kind of depressive, negative manner like that. If I'm too emotional like that, or I'm too assertive, if I am like that for a good few days or a good couple of weeks, then that allows me to see the integration of that part of myself. You say, well, that's a bit of a bad thing, in terms of like, well, if you are too much that way for a few weeks or whatever. But it allows you to really wrestle with that part of your personality. And you see it and you think, I do really have this real emotion within me, or I really do have this real assertion in me, or I really do have this real capability for warmth within me, or I really do have this ability for being quite fatherly with someone, or motherly with someone, or whatever. So those being kind of pushed out to more of the extreme in the personality for a few weeks or whatever actually can be a positive thing, because you can withdraw them then. Because you can see them, and you can start to think, okay, I can see the dynamics of that working within my personality, and I understand what this thing represents within me, and how I can utilize it in now more of an accepting and more of a positive light as well. Then you can withdraw it back in, and then when you withdraw it back in, you start to get more integration there. And there's a long way to go for myself and for many people, and it's hard to pick up on these nuances of, well, I've gone a bit over there, or I've gone a bit this way there, I've gone a bit that way there. Because it's not just over exuberance, it's not just to the extreme, but it's also in subtleties of language and in subtleties of action that then you have to start to see, and you have to start to break down, you have to start to analyse, and you have to start to think, well, I don't know about that. And then you have to withdraw your analysis, because you have to say, well, hang on, I'm being too analytic here, because I'm analysing all this stuff, whereas I'm not just letting it happen. So then you have to withdraw your analysis and realise that your analysis is a part, is too much of a fundamental part of all of the different things that you are viewing within yourself. And instead of allowing, let's say, what would be called in Jungian psychology, the feeling function to come out more, you're using the thinking function too much to analyse all of the different parts of your personality. So then you get into the thinking, well, in Myers-Briggs terms, it's called a tertiary loop function. Jung didn't really have a name for it per se. He did draw a diagram for it. It was a diagram that looked like the yin and yang, where you would think, you would take on board some intuition, and you would then take on board some sensation from the world, but you would neglect feeling. You would neglect the feeling function, the emotions. So then you have to then think, well, I'm analysing too much. So then you have to try and go back to that feeling function. And that's hard. because you've got to try and incorporate the feeling function. Well, you can't incorporate the feeling function because, you see, the feeling function has to be spontaneous. You can't force emotions for someone. You can't force emotions for a situation, you see. So how does the feeling function come out if you can't force emotions for a situation? And you're analysing all of these things within your personality, and you're getting good headway on that, but you're too thinking. And there's no way to use the feeling function. Or seemingly there is, but it's hard. Because what you have to do is you have to, when you are around people you care about, you have to allow the feeling function to come up naturally, which quite naturally it should do anyway. Well, especially if you're a feeling type. And you allow that feeling to come up. Then you don't analyse it. That's the hard bit. You don't analyse it. You just embrace it. You go with it. You feel it. You know what it is to feel emotion, to understand, to be captivated in that world of not thinking, not rationale, not any of this analytic ideas, but feeling. Not what does it mean to feel, but just to feel. When you see a cute dog on the street, or when you see a cute cat picture on Instagram, what does it mean? No, not what does it... See, I'm doing it now. I'm getting back into the thinking function. You see, I'm terrible. Not what does it mean to feel, but to feel it. What emotions are springing up? Don't analyse them. Don't think about them. Just go with the feeling. The exact feeling that's there. Nothing else. Nothing added. Nothing. Just, oh, that's nice. You know, whatever feel. And emotion. And I mean, if it comes to it, tears and things like that. That's, you know, but how you do that, you know, because for me, you know, the feeling function's very, very alien to me. It's not a thing I'm particularly into. You know, I like thinking. I'm good with thinking. Everyone knows I'm good with thinking. I can do that. I'm all right. But the feeling thing, well, I say I'm not that great with thinking. I say I'm good with thinking. I'm not actually that great with thinking. My thinking function needs development actually quite drastically. But I think, here we go, you see, I think I'm good at thinking. So therefore I delude myself into thinking I'm good at thinking. But no, my thinking function needs some definite work. Because my thinking function is coloured by my feeling function that is displaced into the coldness of the intellect. And so the feeling function doesn't come out in the representative way that it needs to. And so that's a tricky one as well. Anyway, let me look in the chat. Oh, yeah. Oh, God. Is it Jasmine? Yasmin, right? Yasmin, right? Sorry, I've not seen you in it. Yasmin. I think Yasmin. Okay. Right then. Let me go up. Don't smoke too much, Adz. I used to smoke years ago. It didn't do my lungs any good. No, I don't smoke much. It's not really saying the whole idea of alignment with yourself, actually. It's not really who I am to smoke specifically. You know, not really a part of my personality. Not fully. It's in there, and I won't reject that side of my personality, but there is, I mean, specifically within Adz smokes, you know, as a part of my personality, and Adz is, of course, me. He is me, but, you know, me as Adam, is that a full thing that I consciously should express as a natural form of my personality? Maybe not so much. So it's something that I just do from time to time. And I didn't do it the other month. I didn't do it for a month. I hadn't smoked for an entire month. And when I do, I only smoke one. I have one, and that's that, and I'm done. But I enjoy it nonetheless. I enjoy that kind of occasional chill, occasional chill. But no, you're very right to point that out there, and it is something that I keep in my consciousness, because I don't think it is exactly aligned to who I am. You don't seem introverted, Adz. You seem very confident. Well, I don't know why. It's weird. I'm antithetical to myself, because I am very introverted, very introverted. Probably among the top 10% of introverted people in the world. Now, bear in mind, introversion, yes, it does mean lower social interaction in a sense, because there's been some research done not long ago around introversion and around dopamine production in the brain and things like that. And it's kind of been found out that introverts are, they don't get that same dopamine hit around the external world as, let's say, extroverts do. And that's very conforming with Jung's original ideas of introversion, extroversion, obviously more empirical ideas, less sort of dogmatically scientific, shall we say, but empirical ideas in certainly the late teens of the last century, and 1920, 1921, publication of Psychological Types in 21. 100 years this year, actually, 100 years, that's quite cool. But yeah, so there is that, but you see, an introvert isn't... It's becoming more and more aware to me that an introvert, the level of introversion someone has, it's more based on the ideas and the stimulation from the internal world. It doesn't necessarily mean you aren't confident or you aren't social per se. You could be social for a little while, but you could be sat there, and this is what I do. Right, so imagine like I'm in a group of people, and I can be social in a group of people. I can be not social, but I can be within a group of people for a while, listening to what they have to say and all the rest of it. But all the while I'm listening to what they have to say, I'm kind of drifting in and out, because I'm in my own mental world of ideas, planning things, scheming things, all the rest of it, and working things out, philosophical ideas, all this sort of stuff. Working out what I'm going to do with poetry, what I'm going to do with books, all this sort of stuff. And we all have that. Loads of people have that, and introverts more so. And so I've learned really that you can, you can be somewhat in social groups and things like that, but yet you can still be a very, very highly introverted person, even if you appear quite naturally at times to be somewhat extroverted, but actually you are very much introverted and within yourself. I think that if, let's say, you're always in social groups, and if, let's say, you're always, and this is a stipulation, you're always talking in social groups, I suppose is the word gregariousness. I'd have to double check that. You're gregarious. I have to check if that's the right word, but it might be the right word. It might be the word I'm thinking about. But if you have that, then yes, extrovert all the way. But you could be in a social group. You could be sat in a social group for a long time, most of the day, and you could drift in and out of the conversation. But you could be very much in your own world, and that's an introvert, you see, and it's not directly related to, just being in your room, or just withdrawing. I mean, there's this very, very... it works. It does work to a degree. But there's this very, very kind of big idea of, well, there's a simple question to ask yourself if you're an introvert and extrovert. Do you recharge your batteries when you're in a room at home, or on your own at home, or when you're out in a social situation? And that does stand true to what an introvert and extrovert could be. But there's more to it than that as well. There's more intricacies. It's not just, well, you're in your room, you're there, it's more intricate than that. It's about the inner world and the outer world. And you see, you can be in your inner world even if you're in a social group with people. You can be there in yourself, in your mind, and so that's very much quite introverted, even though you're in a social group. I mean, it's contrary to itself, but it is the case. And so I would say I'm very introverted. I mean, it never comes up on tests that I'm very introverted, but I know I'm very introverted. Because I really think heavily when I'm walking down the street. I think, and I'm oblivious to the world. I'm just walking down the street and I'm thinking in myself. And while it would come up on tests sometimes that I'd be more extroverted than I may think, and I do definitely possess that side, it seems quite likely that I'm pretty high in introversion. Anyway, I'm going to just look back down the chat and then we'll wrap up. Hey Adam, you're looking well. Hope you aren't melting. Hope you aren't well, I am actually. It is boiling. It's been boiling the last few days. It's been crazy, but it's been nice nonetheless. Dumpster diving, hi there. It sucks when a good friend changes for us. Yeah, exactly, it does, It is the case. Real friends care about each other and are there no matter what. Yeah, that's very, very much true, I've known a narcissist. They're toxic. Don't want them in my life. Well, narcissism is a difficult one because, you see, it's hard to... The labelling of someone as a narcissist is a very, very challenging thing. And no psychologist would ever be kind of moving towards that way of thinking of labelling someone as such. I don't feel. I feel it only when it would definitely warrant it. Definitely warrant it. Because you see, narcissistic personality disorder and things like that, yes, it exists. Yes, there of course are narcissists out there. But you also have people who have complexes, for example, that make them slightly... I've seen this in many people. I've seen it in myself as well. You have complexes that make people more introverted in a narcissistic manner. Now, that's not necessarily narcissistic personality disorder, but it is some reinforced narcissism from certain negative experiences in the past that have formulated complexes over the years, and all these experiences coming together that have then led to someone being more that way inclined. Now, I would never in a million years think of labelling someone in that circumstance as a narcissist or anything like has narcissistic personality disorder, because I don't think that's right. I think you'd have to really look at that person. If you wanted to give them, if you're doing a diagnosis of narcissistic personality disorder, you've got, any diagnosis, any labeling, because it all causes stigmatization. Any diagnosis, you've got to be very, very careful with what you say, in the sense of, well, you do not want that person to be overcome by that label, or overcome by the kind of stigma, or the kind of feeling that can provide. Now, you do have an old psychological viewpoint that comes into this. It's not really a psychological viewpoint. It's more of a kind of old, more strict, common sense sort of attitude as well. The labels are gaining power over people, more so in the 21st century, because we allow for an infantile attitude in people generally, but also in people who are more neurotic as well. And so they get even more neurotic when they get labeled, because they themselves are reinforcing their neurosis with the ideas and the projections that they attach to that label. And it's another way, it's another kind of infantile way of not actually overcoming the neurosis. Now, will psychologists ever say this? No, because they like to... Psychologists in the 21st century, scientific psychologists and research psychologists and some other not all psychologists, but some types of psychologists, like to bubble wrap people now. They don't like to push people. They don't like to say to people, hang on, are you not just being a little bit infantile here? We need to get you out of this. Let's go and do what we need to do to get you out of this. Instead of doing that, and there are psychologists who will be a bit more like I wouldn't say assertive. What I would say is, I'd say they're more focused on getting the person out of whatever it is. They're more pragmatic. That's the word, pragmatic. While there are people like that, there's a lot of this kind of, we better not step on anything here. We better not label anyone because it can stigmatize so much. Yes, it can stigmatize. Yes, labeling someone can have adverse effects for someone. But we don't want to overdo that. We don't want to kind of, never label someone. We don't want to just never reject labeling someone, but we do want to be careful. Like I've said, we want to be careful. We want to make sure that we're labeling someone at the exact time that's appropriate, and we want to be pushing that person to be who they can be, but we don't want to we don't want to never label them and never do that. I think that's the right way around that I was talking about there. But yeah, but MPD is particularly one, in my opinion, that's got to be thought of carefully, because and this is a very good, a good example. Let's say you've got someone who is, let's say, a little bit more narcissistic, but they've not got MPD. And then you go ahead and label them as that. And then they feel crushed inside. They feel really bad from that, right? They feel really taken down from that. They feel, I'm not a narcissist. I'm not, I'm not that, all the rest of it. And yeah, that you might make the argument, that them being labelled as that might make them wake up to the fact that, yes, okay, they're not a narcissist per se, but they do have a little bit of narcissism, and then maybe they'll sort out a bit, etc. That's a very good point, because it can work. It can work like that. I'm not saying that would be the case in, let's say, a practice or anything, but if that situation were to hypothetically arise, it could work like that, but the problem with it is you can really crush someone. You can really make them quite low by doing that. So you have got to be careful. But and the only other issue for me, because I take more of a holistic viewpoint on the world, I would quite happily consult in a practice or anything with murderers or with anyone, because to me, I always think there's things within people that we can help, that we can sort. I don't take any of this extremist idea of, well, they're evil, that person's all evil, they did this and they are exactly evil. Yes, okay, the fact is that if someone's committed bloody 20 murders or whatever, there's probably a hell of a lot of evil within them. But it doesn't mean that a chat with me or someone else couldn't help them to a small, tiny little degree, couldn't give them some tiny little shred of humanity in them, couldn't just help them a little bit, some way, somehow. But no, people will always, blatantly say, well, the label and shadow project, that person is exactly 100% evil. There's not one tiny cent of redemption or good in them or anything like that. I don't think. I mean, it might be the case, and I'm not rejecting that person might go ahead and murder someone else or whatever. But the fact is, if a conversation with me or someone else, not necessarily me, but whoever, would help them in some way, in the tiniest way, to realise some sort of portion of good within themselves, then why shouldn't I do it, But let's say you've got someone with MPD, and they've been labelled as such. Now, MPD, because I've thought about this a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit, but it seems to be one of the most stigmatised disorders. So, schizophrenia, which is another stigmatised disorder. Anxiety less so these days. Most people have anxiety these days, so it's less stigmatised because, oh, you've got anxiety, okay, I get that, I understand it. It's known, it's in consciousness of everyone. People know what people with anxiety are like now, so there's not really any stigmatisation towards like, oh, well, you must be a weird person, or you must be someone a bit that I don't really want to associate myself with. Anxiety's cool. Depression's not as stigmatised. Yes, okay, I'm not saying there's no stigmatisation. There is stigmatisation with these things. Yes, obviously. But there's less stigmatisation than with certain things. Like, for example, with schizophrenia or with MPD. And with, like, schizophrenia, the main stigmatization is more so than anxiety and depression. If you're going to get stigmatization with anxiety and depression with someone, you're going to get people not understanding it, but kind of not really being too fearful of it. Because they kind of, as I say, they know what anxiety and depression is. So no one really ever stigmatizes someone who's got anxiety or depression. It does happen, but no one stigmatizes someone with anxiety or depression really to the degree of, oh my god, this person, I'm scared of this, like really, really terrified of this person. But with schizophrenia, although it's not even the case that this happens half the time, way more than half the time, I'm just over exaggerating. It's very, 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 very minimal amount of people with schizophrenia that are actually like dangerous or anything. But the main stigmatization around schizophrenia is aggression and thinking that they're really, really deluded and crazy and they're going to kill someone or something like that. And that's not the case at all. But that's one of the ones that is really quite heavily stigmatized still. Now it seems, although I've not done any research on this one particularly, I've done research on anxiety and depression, I've done research on schizophrenia, and it is the case that anxiety and depression do have stigmatization, very much so, but it's, compared to the other ones, it's relatively okay. It's relatively okay. But MPD seems to me, from an intuitive standpoint, that it's another bad one, because imagine you go up to a person, you get chatting with them, you start talking with them, and you've talked with them for a good few weeks, and they decide to open up to you. So they decide to open up to you. And they say, look, I've got narcissistic personality disorder. What immediately are your thoughts with that? Oh, hang on, this guy's an inflated, guy who's, all self-absorbed and da-da-da. You have all these preconceptions and ideas, and suddenly you're not really too fond about being this guy's friend or anything like that. And it might very well be that this guy is getting loads of different help for MPD or whatever. But, that's the stigmatization of it. And so if we say, and this is what people do, and the media is terrible for this. No, you never be friends with a narcissist. Never do it. Never at all do it. They are the worst people in the world. Okay, yes, there is that side. I'm not going to bullshit anyone by saying, no, there isn't that side. They're a narcissist. Okay, yes, there is that side. But where does that leave all of these narcissists? It leaves them in an antisocial position, not really got any much of a life. It leaves them more neurotic. It leaves them in a terrible state, absolute terrible state. And you don't know what those people then may do. They may get an over-association with the shadow. They may become more shadowy, maybe get shadow-possessed or something, even more than potentially they have become. That, you don't know what antisocial behaviour leads to. It can lead to some pretty dark places. And so, if, you don't know. So they're all excluded, and that's not a good thing. So the best situation for people with narcissistic personality disorder is to get sustained help, for possibly a very, very long time. Get sustained help for a very, very long time. But integrate socially where possible. And how is that going to happen if people have this huge stigma attached to narcissistic personalities? It's not going to happen. But that's only going to be the worst for society, because all these narcissists and all these narcissistic personalities, they're going to be all antisocial. And it's not like we've got a very social society as it is. We're a very antisocial society. The world is very antisocial. And you might say to me, Adam, the world isn't antisocial. Look at all the social media and look at all these things that we've got. We're very social. Yeah, but social media is really a form of antisocialness, because it's like, well, I don't really want to meet up with you, so I'm going to just talk to you behind a screen. I don't really want to talk to you face to face, so I'm not going to talk to you face to face at this moment. I'm going to talk to you behind a screen. It's kind of a blocker to being fully social. It's kind of like there's a something slot in between the social relationship, and that's the technology that kind of like acts like a filter, if you will, like a screen. And so we're not really a very social society as we were. We had to be more years ago, where there was no technology. If you wanted to say hi to someone, you literally had to go to them. You had to go to them, or you at work and all the rest of it, and you don't just email someone, right? So you're at your computer. This goes on a lot now. You're at your computer, and someone's in another room or on another floor. You think, oh, I'll just email them. I'll email, and you email them, and they're right upstairs. So it's not really we've become an antisocial society more so by way of a reduction in the quality of social relationships. It's not that we've necessarily become antisocial as in, well, we've all disconnected completely, but we've become antisocial by the way of lesser quality social relations. And that's not a good thing. Equally, it wouldn't be a good thing if we just disconnected and we were completely antisocial. But it's not a good thing that we've become that. And everyone knows it's not a good thing, but no one does anything about it because, well, everyone believes that's the way the world's going. And if everyone believes that's the way the world's going, the world will go that way. And even if a couple of people don't believe that should be the way the world goes, it won't be enough to stop it going that way. It would have to be enough people, especially on the scale of technology, because of how big technology is. So it's going to go that way. So it's not a good thing anyway. And imagine we've got all this segregation by stigmatization of mental health, and we've got increased anxiety, and we've got increased depression, and we've got all these other loads of different things impinging on us, increased natural disasters, bad environment, more commercialism, all these sorts of things. If anyone was religious, they'd say we're living in the end times. They'd say the book of Revelations is going to come true. There's going to be some sort of weird major disaster. They're going to say, oh, if you're Hindu, you'd say, oh, well, the time of Kali's come. She is black. She's going to stand on the body of Shiva. She's going to cut off the head of Shiva, holding it in her hand. And we're going to go into oblivion, and that's that, and whatever other way, destruction by fire, destruction by ice, whatever other mythological motif you could call upon, it wouldn't really matter. But there you go. If you're that way inclined, you believe that because, well, clearly it echoes all these things quite obviously. And then you think, well, even if you're not that way inclined, even if you don't believe in any mythology or religion, you think, well, hang on, I might not believe in any mythology or religion, but it does seem that things are ramping up quite considerably here. It does seem that we're getting a little bit less natural and human and with nature and with spirit and all the rest of it, and with soul as well, and we're becoming in this realm of just disaster and increased likelihood of death on a grand scale. And regardless whether you're an atheist or whether you're religious or whatever, there is that in the air. There is that kind of feeling in the air. This kind of weird ambiguity and negative ambience. It's like a negative ambience in which something's happening. Things are not good. Things are not straight at the moment. In many ways. Psychologically, physiologically even, with regards to people consuming more food, in the sense of consuming fast food and getting more obese and all the rest of it. Ecologically, with the disasters. Socially, societally, with the antisocial stuff I mentioned. Spiritually, a spiritual connection to the land gone. The Native Americans are still preaching it. The Aboriginal Australians are still preaching it. They're saying Western man has lost its connection to Mother Earth, and that's what's going to be his downfall. They know this. The shamans of the Naskapi, or the shamans of the Shu, or whatever, or the medicine men, the Marburn in Aboriginal Australia, of the dream time, of the dreaming. The clever men and clever women, as they're also known, they know this. The yogis and the people like that over in India, the Taoist masters, all these people with these deep connections to the earth, all of these people know this in an intuitive manner, in a very, very deep manner, but yet we will not take that. And it wouldn't matter what your views are, what your ideological views are, your philosophical views are on existence. Taking respect and reverence of those people who have lived for generations with the land, in harmony with the land, taking those views on board at least, and thinking about how we can implement some of these more ancient practices into society. Some would argue the shamanistic practices, but more immediately at the moment, more getting back to that naturalistic philosophy of living in harmony with nature, or living in harmony with the Tao. That's crucial, and it wouldn't matter what your philosophical stance is, what your religious stance is. None of that wouldn't matter at all, that, because we all know it's a good thing that is necessary. Now, of course, some people would say, with regards to integrating shamanistic rituals into society, well, maybe not. But certainly the naturalistic philosophy of these kind of groups in different points of the world, it's necessary. I do believe that possibly it's a possibility that integrating the shamanistic view of certain religions and traditions would work in our society and would be quite good, echoing like the sentiments of Terence McKenna, or I think even Joe Rogan has mentioned it as a possibility, at least here or there, when he's been talking to a couple of people. Graham Hancock as well, he's one of the major preachers for it, and all the rest of it. And I mean, there's a big push at the minute for psychedelic kind of movements within society, and I think that's a natural psychic reaction to the strident kind of atheism and technological rationalism that we have going on in the 21st century, and I think that that's quite natural, and I think that that should take place. I think that that's necessary. You know, people talking about ayahuasca and mother ayahuasca, people talking about DMT, and people talking about psilocybin, and people talking about particularly Mike Tyson talking about smoking these toads and stuff like that, and all the rest of it. And that's a kind of natural reaction to get back to this shamanistic, naturalistic, almost pagan philosophy, shall we say, of years and years ago. Because people are longing for that spiritual connection that we've lost. And we'll see how that plays out, because I don't think that's going to play out that well. Because I think that rationalism and this kind of soullessness is going to win out in the end. I don't think that particular philosophy, that's kind of a reactive philosophy, and a collective reactive philosophy to this more rationalism, I don't think that's going to stand the test of time. I personally do think that society is just going to become more and more soulless. And while I do believe that there will always be pockets of this, rebellion coming up of like, soul and spirit, etc., if we do not win out, let's say if we do not win or attain that spiritual connection with the world again in the next 50 years, shall we say, if we make it through bloody climate change and all the rest of it. But if we don't win that back, then we're going to have a hard time of it. If we do win that back, then there might just be a way through. But I don't know. I can't see it. I can't fully see it. And it's not nice to not be able to see it, Anyway. Do you believe people are evil, or is it that their lack of empathy and compassion, coupled with anger or other negative feelings, makes it much easier for them to do terrible acts? I think that some people aren't kind of neurotypical, which means that their brain structure is slightly different, and so they may be more predisposed to evil acts. I think that certain people generally just have an over, and this may tie in with the not being neurotypical idea. I think that generally certain people have a higher relationship with the instincts of aggression, and within that is the instinct to kill. Now, the instinct to kill is present within all of us. Now, in society, we have to repress that. No one can kill. The best we can do is kill a fly. Or, it might kill something slightly greater than a fly here or there. But you see, that's why people do kill flies a lot of the time. Because it's like, it's that kind of just a bit of aggression within us that needs to get expression. So it's not completely repressed, But there is fundamentally a collective repression of the instinct to kill. And then that comes out generally in these pockets of murder in society. And, people, because people generally aren't that aware of themselves and the world, generally project onto the murderers their own instincts to kill and their own shadow onto the murderer, saying, well, I'd never do that, that's not me, that's all the rest of it, da da da. And it might be true that they could never formulate, for a lot of us, we could never formulate in our imagination a situation where we could get into where we would actually kill someone. But nonetheless, even if you don't think that there could be a situation like that, the instinct to kill still lives as a potentiality within your unconscious, within your genetics, within the genome. All animals kill. In the natural world, the lions kill the antelopes and things like that, and it's an instinct. It's one could say it is natural. It is a natural thing. Now, of course, in human society, it's not necessarily natural because we're rational creatures now, and so therefore we have the ability to tame it. And so therefore you could say, well, no, it's not really natural because we naturally possess rationality, and so therefore we have the ability to stop it. Now, that's not always the case in actual fact. It's the case for most of us, but it's not the case for everyone, because what you'll find is that murderers, this is why generally a lot of people say when they're aggressive towards someone, oh, I just saw red. I've said that before. But that's because the instincts take over the rationality. They overcome the rationality, close down the rationality, and then it's just instinctual carnage. So what happens is because we're this society that's like that and that's repressing collectively this instinct to kill, the way that comes out, and that has to come out somewhere. You see, if you push something down, it has to come out somewhere else. It's like, you have a float in a swimming pool. You have like one of them floats, right? And if you push that to the bottom of the swimming pool, you've got some force there, haven't you? Because it wants to come up, wants to push up again. That's the same. It's exactly the same mechanism as that. And then it'll pop up again. So the more a society represses as a collective, the more a society represses the instincts for aggression or the instincts to kill or whatever instincts like that, the instincts for dominance, these kind of things, then it has to come back up somewhere else. And the more they repress it, the more violently it has to come out. So a healthy society, it's quite bad to say that this is a healthy representation of a society, but it's the best that we can do. A healthy society only has pockets of murder, but it has to have pockets of murder. If it did not have pockets of murder, then the society as a whole is in danger of a big wave coming up. Like that float that you're pressing down shooting right up and whacking you on the back of a chin, like on the chin there, and then whacking you over. Now, that is a bad society. If you've got this really goody, nice society that's all above board, that's all incredibly rational, that's all incredibly, in a sense, dystopian. If you have a society like that, which is this, kind of, oh yeah, happy-go-lucky persona society, then you're going to be in the mood for something big. A dictator, some sort of romanticized riots or rebellion or whatever. Something is going to come forth from the unconscious, whatever it is, to storm back in. So I think it's a very, very complex thing about people. I think everyone within them, I reject this idea that that evil is just socialized, that there is, evil's just a product of society, that innately we don't possess any evil. That is a stupid idea. I will give you perfect illustration that it's a stupid idea in one example. You go to the bloody jungle and you see a bloody lion tear apart an antelope or some other animal, whatever animal, it can be any bloody animal on the planet. You go up to them, assuming they're a carnivore, of course. You go up to them and you will see some sort of capability for evil. Now you might say, well, what about the herbivores? Maybe they're not evil, but of course they have self-defense. I mean, you can see different herbivores trying to whack lions away or trying to whack different creatures away because they have that instinct for aggression within them. So I think it's absolutely absurd to think that evil is a socialized conception. Now, okay, the conceptualization of the instincts for aggression as evil, as a concept, is that a little bit kind of symbolic, or is it symbolically disconnected? Well, one could say yes, it is slightly, but it's like aggression and evil to me are very closely related. It's a very similar thing, because aggression turns into evil in the act of hurting someone or killing someone. So I would say, with specifically the psychopaths or the sociopaths, there's something maybe not neurotypical in them. Now, I don't know. I've not done much research on sociopaths or psychopaths. I do know that in certain psychopaths and things like that, they aren't neurotypical. I know that, but I don't know whether it's all of them or anything like that. But there's something to do with not being neurotypical there. There's something also, and it might be in line with a neurotypical, or it might be just aside from it. There's something to do with the instincts there, to being over-reinforced. And there's something also to do with socialization. That's the third one, socialization. There are circumstances where socialization can make someone maybe predisposed to more aggression, more evil than they maybe likely would have done in other circumstances. And of course, maybe they did have quite an association with the instincts for aggression anyway. But aside from that, this kind of web of behavior and environment has formed a particular version of themselves that is now more aggressive and that then does something wrong. They seem to be about the three. Not neurotypical, over instincts for kind of dominance, aggression, all those sorts of things, or socialized in a certain manner, maybe in unison with these, that then get you to that particular state. They're the three that I can see at the moment. And I'm not saying that that's all of them. It's very, very complex. And it's very, very individual. But it seems that it's something along those lines, around, within that sort of idea. And that's the thing we all have to come to terms with as well. And I think we do from time to time. While none of us can imagine ourselves killing someone, or even killing an animal, like a zebra or a kangaroo or whatever, that's something that we do in fleeting moments think about. maybe after we've watched a horror movie, or maybe after we've watched some terrible thing that happened on TV, or whatever it is. There are these fleeting moments in our life that are somewhat philosophical that make us think, well, could I do that? Is that something I could do? And there's always this weird little thing in the back of your mind, and I would associate this with the shadow personally, but there's always this weird little thing at the back of your mind that says, maybe there's something that, maybe it's possible that in a specific extreme circumstance, in some particular form, maybe there would be something I would do that would be that evil. There always seems to be that remaining at the back of right at the back of our mind. The Germans would say, as Alan Watts has said, a Hintergedanke, a certain thought at the back of the mind that is just there. It's just when we think about those things. And I thought about it way more, as a psychology student and as a someone who loves philosophy. I thought about it a lot more than other people. I mean, I'm very, very, very aware that if a certain circumstance arose, I would do something quite drastic, and that would be just based on my. I've thought about it as well in terms of where I would go sexually, what I would do sexually, like the extremes of that as well, and I know, because I've been through it a lot. I've been really into the depths of my imagination, and I've really been into the depths of thought with this. And it's not a nice place to go. It's a dark place to go, but you start to see that there are circumstances, extreme circumstances, where the darkest parts of yourself would even come out, and there would be things that you would do that you wouldn't ever associate yourself with normally. You would never ever think, and this comes out in dreams as well. You might have a dream of, might not be you yourself. It's never normally me myself in dreams. It's normally I'm onlooking it. But you might be onlooking a murder, and this man or woman who's murdering someone is murdering them quite brutally, and you're forced to watch that in your dream. Your dream ego is forced to watch that. And now, of course, everything that is in your dream is a product of your own brain, a product of your own psyche, and so all of those characters are yourself. They are a part of your personality. They can't be anything different, because it's only your brain who's had that dream. So those characters can't be from someone else's brain. It has to be from your brain. So then you think, well, I was in part there, the one doing the murdering, because that was part of my psyche, a potential of my psyche. So, I've had visions. I've had terrible, horrible visions and dreams of things like that. And you have to come to terms with it. And you have to think, well, would I do that? Now, the brilliant thing is that this lends itself quite naturally to creativity. So all of these people who do horror movies, what they really do is they go into the unconscious and they have these very, very dark fantasies. And it's quite a cathartic process, because it allows that person to not repress those instincts of dominance or instincts of aggression or this kind of real primal man, carnal man. And so the people who do the horror movies, well, they're quite, if you actually look at them and see who they are as a person, they're actually quite calm people, and sometimes they're actually quite nice people. Now, some of them are a little bit eccentric or a little bit weird or whatever, and yeah, the odd one can be dark, but a lot of the time are quite calm and quite nice, because they've got out. And it's the same with people who act in as villains in shows. People who act as villains in shows generally are quite nice people in real life, because they've done so much of that. They've really kind of poured through and poured out all of those bad sides of man, and they've come to terms with them. And now they're like, well, you know what? I'm I'm done with that. I'm all right. I'm just gonna be nice. I'm done with that. So the horror movies and the gore and all this sort of stuff, that's quite good. And that in society, and I've talked about this before, it is such a necessity in society that we keep producing horror movies and things like that. Because, you see, when everyone has the ability to watch these horror movies, they have the ability to get off on them in a sense. They're scared of them, yes, they fear them, but also in the back of their mind there's a kind of sense of, well, I'm connecting with that primal part of myself that I can't have access in my own experience. So it means that it's not repressed so much. Not so much anyway. It means that it can come out a bit. It's like a tea kettle. This is a great other example, other than the float. A tea kettle is a great example. When you've got a tea kettle and you're boiling it, and then it's all bubbling like crazy, and maybe you've kept it on for too long, or somehow the things got stuck, the little switch has got stuck and it stayed on. Well, what happens with a tea kettle is so that then pressure doesn't build up like crazy inside of it, it needs to let all this steam off. So it needs to let off that steam. That's the mechanism of the horror movie. Now, that is also the mechanism of the people murdering in society. It's letting out the steam of those instincts that are repressed. And but certainly with the horror movies, that's why we say, and this is why people love things like Rick and Morty. I mean, it's why I love Rick and Morty. It's very aggressive, it's very carnal, we've got references to sex in there, and quite blatant scenes with sex in there. You've got all of this exuberance, all of this kind of just incredible spontaneity, of instinctual spontaneity. And people being able to actually produce these things in society, and people able to watch these things in society, it just allows them that release. Because we're too rational. We're too, as Nietzsche would say, Apollonian. That's I'm probably pronouncing that. Apollonian? I can't even say that. Apollonian, anyway. I probably pronouncing it wrong there. But the Greek god Apollo, of course. Or the Greek god Dionysus. And the Dionysian attitude to life is the instinctual. And the Apollo's attitude to life is the rational. You would say maybe that, I don't know, Aristotle would favour Apollo more. Nietzsche, of course, is Dionysus. And Jung would be more Dionysus. Jung would believe that we're too rational. Nietzsche believed it, Jung would believe it as well. We're too rational. We need that more instinctual so we don't get an outburst. We go to work every day, and people are sat in an office, and they're made to be rational, with no spontaneity, with no thinking, oh, yeah, I'll be like this, I'll be like the other, with no individuality. Okay, yes, you may think, well, people are allowed individuality in an office. Yeah, but is it really conducive to individuality? The little cubes that you get sat down in. Yeah, okay, maybe you can put up a little picture of your wife or your kids. Maybe furnish it or decorate it a little bit. But the buildings are all the same these days. They're all this weird kind of just brick. Very kind of mundane, not really expressive or individual. The buildings themselves have become forms of our rational sense of being. Our architecture is gone. Not many people create good, individual, chaotic and instinctual architecture anymore. Only the good people, not anyone else really. And so we have this in our life, this rationality, this nihilism of existence, this monotony, this going round and going round and going. So we get home at night and we have to have some instinctiveness. It's even a rational act to have sex nowadays. There's no instinctiveness in sex. Not much of it, And that's why the young people so want more instinctiveness with it. This is why all the kinks are coming out even more and more and more, because we feel like we've missed our soul. We've not got a soul anymore. So we have to have all these different, sexual kinks and all these different gender ideas now, and all this, because it makes us feel we're trying to grasp at this hedonistic treadmill of, well, let us feel as if we've claimed our soul back. Whereas we wouldn't need so much of that kind of stuff if we already knew we were instinctual and we lived instinctually or instinctively. Because if we lived instinctively, we would probably actually have more of a tendency towards rationalism, to a degree, not fully. But because we've lived instinctually for a while, a bit more instinctual, we've got a bit more of that dimension in a controlled environment, we'd be more sympathetic to rational ideas and even somewhat what could be determined as conservative ideas. This is playing out politically at the moment, where we've got this play towards liberalism and very, very extremist liberalism, because people have lost their connection to the instincts and the soul, and so they want this liberal form of existence in which we must be expressive in all forms of that takes. But yet everybody is depressed because they're just chasing all this externally. They're not realizing an instinctual way of living within themselves that is a controlled way within society. That's what we need. We need a controlled instinctual way of living within society that is a little bit higher than it is now. Only a little bit, not too much, just a little bit more. So, these TV shows are helping us cling on. They're helping us cling on to these kind of instinctive ways of being. These kind of spontaneous events are helping us cling on to ways of being. These kind of hedonistic events, parties and so forth, they are products of being less feeling attuned to the instincts, but they're also things that do help us get it out a little bit. But ultimately, we are a rational society, and ultimately, that can be quite a negative thing. That can be quite a negative thing. Well, Hitler's a very, very interesting one. I won't go into that tonight. Jesus, Hitler was a very complex. Now, I've not read much on Hitler, so I will not go into it in much detail. But I've got my own hypotheses on Hitler's psychology and stuff like that. Basically, it's a combination of what happened in his life. You're very right to say as well, Susie, of people allowing him to rise to power, which was generally a collective hero projection onto Hitler himself. People wanted this hero of Hitler to come through. This is generally what Jung talks about, Jung's idea of Hitler. My observations, aside from Jung, are also that, and Jung would probably agree with this somewhat as well, but he seemed to have a very infantile psychology. He seemed to have a very divine child-esque psychology. He had sex with his not a nephew, was it his cousin? I think it might have been his cousin. He had sex with his cousin or someone like that. Or niece. That was it. His niece. Yeah, that was it. Yeah, it came back to me. He had sex with his niece and all the rest of it. He certainly had many, many different complexes and things like that. And these things, along with his experiences in life, led him down this very dark path of collective instincts that bubbled up straight to the surface, that really just got out of hand and that just made itself known. Now, Jung talks about Germany is in what I refer to as collective cultural psychology, well, actually what I refer to as collective cultural macro psychology, but I don't think you really need the macro in there. It's a bit superfluous. And there may be another name for this. I've just not found the other name, so I apologise if I'm double labelling with that or anything. But Jung talks about how, and this is collective cultural psychology is genius. And it's not even talked about in psychology. You'll never get it talked about. But Germany formed after, and this is, I'm using Jung's words almost exactly here. Germany formed after and got like their independence, shall we say, after France and England were already well formed in their empires. And if you want to know where this is, it's in the, I believe, if I'm quoting correctly, it's from the Omnibook interview, magazine interview, from 1942, where Jung had a conversation with a man in that, of course, and he talked about Hitler in that. He talks, that is a gem of an article for anyone interested in Jung. I found it quite early on. I was quite lucky, and I've read it about 3 times since, so I can tell you, I can quote a lot of it quite easily. I do love that. I love that magazine interview. I really do. And so anyway, I think it's in that. I think it's in that. If it's not in that, then it's in something like Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious, but I think it's in Omnibook magazine interview. And so he says that, of course, Germany has always had, as a collective country, because you imagine, I've talked about it before, the collective country is a kind of expression of the individual psyches of every person in that country, and all of the behaviour of all of the people in that country, all of their psychological and physical behaviour, build up and create the collective kind of psyche of that country. And so that country, a country can have complexes. A country can be under shadow projection or shadow possession or anything. That's why we get wars and things like that. That's genius. You know how genius that is? And Jung was really one of the first to work that out. Really, he might have been even the first to work it out. Maybe some people thought about it here and there before, but not really. You know, he was very, very good with it, credible with it. So, because France and England and the UK have already formed their nations and all the rest of it, formed their kind of empires, shall we say, Germany had a inferiority complex, and it was because France and England are kind of their brothers, shall we say, in distance, in relative position, and of course all those countries compete for resources, just like brothers and sisters compete for things in the environment, compete for their mother's attention, and compete for other things like that, and compete for money and sweets and all this sort of stuff, you see, and the countries are competing for resources and in things such as land, or in things such as gold or silver. It's just the same, you see. Brilliant. And so Jung thought that was the case. And so Germany was always trying to be productive and trying to increase itself. And we could maybe argue that the inferiority complex that Germany had, that may have been extinguished during the war, because Hitler, the hero projection on Hitler, may have actually got that complex out for Germany. But it may have been the reason why slowly Germany became a very, very efficient country, because they're always trying to catch up with the others, you see. And so now they're a very efficient country. We all know the whole archetypal idea of Germany. They're an efficient country in the EU, you know. And, well, to what extent are these things affecting it so that then it is like that? But anyway, so the First World War came and all the rest of it. And as far as I'm aware, Germany had the defeat in the First World War. And my history isn't so good, so I've lost a lot of it. I know that Franz Ferdinand was shot, and then, of course, that led to... There was basically like an Austrian spy or something who shot him, or a German spy, or whoever, whatever nationality that spy was, shot him in a specific other country, but then led to all these disagreements, and I think there might have been a treaty involved or something, and then it just expanded. Anyway, I'd have to look up on that again, because it's been a long time since I researched history of the world wars or anything like that. Anyway, so then of course defeat there, and then the Germans are, and then of course there's depression and all the rest of it, and the Germans are therefore really craving for this heroic figure that they can put their projections into, so that then they can be great, make Germany great again, you know, because if they've got an inferiority complex, and then they've just had all these things that, you know, they're not catching up with France and England, they've had this defeat here, then of course they're going to be, a person with an inferiority complex is going to be riled up, and they're going to want to try and dominate. They're going to try and want to dominate, you see, and want to get back on top, because inward inferiority correlates to outward superiority. Okay, so this guy comes up, very, very sort of animus-like guy, Hitler, when he was on stage, and very, very charismatic in the sense of being a figurehead of a ruler, of someone who will get something done. And Hitler, of course, had his own experiences in the First World War as well. And maybe some of those experiences made him more aggressive, made him want this kind of power more as well. So the idea that Jordan Peterson has is that, which is a very good idea, is that the crowds were projecting him onto him, this hero figure anyway, because they wanted this superiority back for their country. So there was a lot of unconsciousness in that crowd. And Hitler would kind of play to the crowd. And this is what Peterson says on the H3H3 podcast. And Hitler would play to this crowd. And when the crowd would roar, he would notice that, and he would play up to it. And when they wouldn't roar, he wouldn't play up to it. So then his behaviour, Skinner would say, in a behaviourist idea, is behaviourally reinforcing the crowd to like what he's saying. He's manipulating them in that. Now, of course, it's a two-way process, because the crowd is quite happily projecting all their hero ideas onto Hitler, and Hitler is using that energy to then bounce back to that crowd and manipulate them. So it's a very bad situation. We have got this collective reinforcement of a relationship between the crowd and this man. So then we get the brainwashing, and we get all these other things coming through, and we want this particular attitude. And of course Hitler had these complexes that I believe he ignored. I believe Hitler ignored his complexes, and I believe he just solely went for power. So he ignored his development of trying to get out of his complexes, as an ordinary rational person would do. They would say, I'm going to try and get out of these complexes. Instead of doing that, he ignored them. He just got possessed by the shadow, possessed by power, did all of this stuff here, you know, with the crowds. It was a perfect storm of events, with Germany being in the position it was. Hitler made his way up into power very, very manipulatively. He wasn't really anything, Hitler, if you don't know, in the I don't exactly know the time, maybe the early 20s, something like that, maybe a little bit before that, maybe a little bit after that, but he wasn't really much, Hitler. And the thing about Hitler was, people in greater positions of power than him dismissed him, and they thought, oh, Hitler's nothing, he's fine, he's not going to do anything. And it turned out that it was a specific turn of events that worked in his favour, and he got up into power. And all of these people were then kicking himself. Anyway, one of his advisors, I mean, there was a lot of people who did work against him. One of his advisors did work with him for a while and then tried to turn against him. But unfortunately, he was shot dead. And many other people were shot dead and all the rest of it. But Hitler wasn't really anything. But it was the perfect storm of events, both for him personally in his political journey and in his life with regards to his complexes, his upbringing, just the perfect web of neurological structure based on causal environment, experiences, First World War, Germany's position as a collective, the ways in which he got up into power, and the certain people who ended up kind of dismissing him and not putting the right things in place. Then he got up into power. Then he did. I mean, it was just a perfect, terrible web of events. You know, I say perfect, but what I mean is the perfect storm of events that then meant, boom, that was it, you know? And so that's how it works. And, you know, to what extent Hitler maybe had, you know, it was not neurotypical or whatever, that's debatable, I don't know. But no, that's generally more, that's a bit of a story of it, basically, anyway. So that's kind of the idea of Hitler, anyway. And I know I'm not got, like, crazy knowledge on it or anything, but that's what I perceive. You know, so but it is. It's exactly that. Are you thinking PvP was like Trump or something? Yeah, I know. But have you ever read the? I think it's not. Is it the manifesto of the Nazi Party? I don't know, but it is basically just all about Germany. There's about 12 points on there, on one of them anyway, and it's just about Germany. It's just like, just make this country brilliant. It's all about Germany. It is about Germany, you know? And that's really how Hitler did it as well, because if it was about Hitler himself, you see, if he had marketed it in that way, it wouldn't fly. But it's about Germany, you see. Now, it wasn't really about Germany. It was about power. We know that. It was about power. It was about Hitler. It was about destruction as well, really, in my eyes. It wasn't even really about power, I don't think. I think it was about power superficially. I think Hitler wanted power superficially. But I think deeper down on the collective, in the collective unconscious, it was just about destruction. And that's why at the end of the war, like Jordan Peterson again says about Hitler, he ramped up the destruction. And why the hell would Hitler ramp up the destruction if it wasn't about destruction from the beginning? You know what I mean? If it was about power, if it was about power as in influence over other countries and maneuverability and resources and all that, if it was about all that all the time, then Hitler wouldn't just increase the destruction, you know, as he got towards the end of it. Maybe he would, maybe, there's an argument for it, but it seems a bit odd. It seems as if maybe what was happening was over the course of maybe, well, yeah, we could say the course of 39 to 45, right? The shadow possession within him was building and building and building. And at first, at the start of the war, the shadow possession was at a certain level. But then during the end of the war, the later stages, it was at a crazy level. And it wasn't anything about, you know, resources or power or dominance over a specific group. It wasn't anything like that anymore. It was way beyond that. It was, let's kill every bugger on this planet. That's what I think towards the end of the war Hitler wanted. I don't think it was about any of this, let's kill one, let's subjugate one racial group or whatever, or let's let's try and, make Germany this great country because, by the subjugation of these other countries, the domination of these other countries. I think towards the end of the war, it was like, look, I mean, he may be thinking we're losing or whatever. Let's kill, and this was the shadow possession as well. Let's kill every bugger on the planet. I think I do believe that's what it was. That was the level. I believe that was the level it went. Some people can disagree with me, and I might be wrong. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying that I think that's the level it went to, and I think that's ultimately what it was. And then, of course, he would have killed himself because just quite naturally because he knew of what would happen to him, all the rest of it, and maybe there was a sense of failure in himself as well. I don't know, or if that was I can't really see that being conscious though. I mean, if anything, there's probably a very heavy sense of failure unconsciously on him. Maybe there was a sense of failure consciously, but I think he would have repressed a lot of that. I think he would have repressed a hell of a lot of that. Obviously, he would have been aware consciously that he'd failed. In his eyes, he had failed. In our eyes, it was victory. In his eyes, it was failure. And of course, that would have been conscious, but there would have been a lot of repression, I believe. And I think that he would have had this failure in the unconscious, this very, very prominent thing in the unconscious. And to what extent that would have affected his decision to, commit suicide, I don't know. I think that a lot of it would have been to do with what he would have had to go through, like torture or whatever, if he had got captured. I do believe a lot of it would have been that, but maybe some of his failure would have come into it. Maybe this kind of weight on it, because that's not only the weight of one man, that's the weight of all of Germany. Because really, if he's elevated himself with Germany and with all of the psyches of Germany, then he's elevated himself to a position of narcissism and power that is way beyond an individual. So that's a collective representation. Now imagine if that fails, all of that weight comes down, and suddenly it's not a failure of one man, it's a failure of an entire country in him, expressed in him. So to what degree that had an effect, we don't know. But that remains why, when we think of evil, we think, generally, most of us, our minds go immediately to Hitler. Because Hitler is the modern archetypal representation of the villain, the shadow. The biggest you can get. Even if you go back through history, you can get villains here and there. But, when we think of a villain, we think of Hitler. And so he's an individualized representation within the collective unconscious and the collective imagination of mankind, collective imagistic representation of mankind, of the villain. So whenever someone is shadow possessed, sometimes they may get that image of Hitler in their mind. It's not everyone, because people will have their own personal associations and personal imagistic formulations that come in their mind as an image possessing them as the image of the shadow, shall we say, a representation of the archetype. But nonetheless, that's what people get. And the next dictator that comes along, if, let's say, he or she or whatever will be, very much in that kind of ethos of Hitler, they will have an idealization on Hitler. And they will see in their mind an image which they won't be conscious of unless they're very, very psychologically aware. But if they're very, very psychologically aware, then they're not going to be a dictator, because they'd realise the infantile nature of that and how it's just being psychologically broken. There is no healthy psychology to be found whatsoever in a dictator, not one shred. I've tried to think about it, because I've tried to think about things in all lights. Not something that probably most people think about, the positive psychology of a dictator, but I've tried to think about it quite intently, and I can't really see, maybe sense of authority. One could argue that that's more of a positive, but they're using it in a negative way anyway. So there are aspects, but on the whole, a person like that has a very broken and unhealthy psychology, as you would expect. And so the next dictator will have that image, that idolization of Hitler. So, for example, let's say I really look up to Jung, or I really look up to Nietzsche or whoever, and I often have the image of Jung or Nietzsche in my mind, right? When I'm thinking about things, when I'm intellectualizing. That will be the same for this kind of budding young dictator, but it will be Hitler. It won't be Jung or it won't be Nietzsche. The image that they will see is Hitler, and they will idolize Hitler as a father. They'll have a father transference on Hitler. Can you imagine that, having a father transference on Hitler? They would have a father transference on Hitler, and they would study him, and and then they would go into power like that. And to them, that's nothing, because you see, to us, we think, God, that's. So you're going to idolize Hitler, and then you're going to form a dictatorship that's better and more solid, let's say, than that previous one was, so it didn't fail, based on studying and idolizing this person who is absolutely atrocious, and then reinforcing a dictatorship that one would say, by the nature of that person, for example, that person would say is better. And then instead of killing millions, they would kill billions, you see, and they'd try and do it in a different way. So that's what they would do, And God, we've got to be very, very careful at the moment, because the thing is, we've got to be very, very careful, because we're in a bad position for a dictator at the moment. We're in a bad position at the moment. People are infantile. People are looking for a hero. They're looking for someone to put their faith in. We really want that. Everyone wants that. There's this kind of thing in the unconscious. We want a hero. We want someone. We're all sick of these politicians messing about. We're all sick of these things happening, these natural disasters, these all of this stuff that's happening at the moment. We want a hero. And so someone could deceive us there, and they could try and get up somehow. They could try and work it somehow. They could try and latch on somehow to be that. So I often try and go through all the different ways that people are going to do it. I mean, of course, technology is going to be fundamentally one aspect to it. But I try and go through intently different ways they're going to do it. Because obviously I know I can't stop it. I'm not going to be able to stop it. But if I have the knowledge, then maybe I can do something. Maybe I can write something to someone to help, you know what I mean? To stop it, to close them down. But you see, anyone who wants to overcome the next dictator that we have has to be as evil as that dictator, so that then they can know how they're going to do it, you see. I have to be as in a sense, in a theoretical sense, not in a practical sense, of course, but in a theoretical sense, I have to be as evil as that person, so that then I know how to do it. It's like, I've said this before in a video, but it's like private investigators. The private investigators are tough guys, because they have to be as evil as the criminals, so that then they can know all of the moves of the criminals before the criminals make them, so that then they can catch them. So you see, if I want to make sure that I'm stopping a dictator, or giving someone the correct information to stop a dictator, I've got to be as theoretically evil as that dictator to stop their bloody moves, It's bloody ridiculous. So, so I have to go through some pretty rough crap in my mind, like to think, well, how are they going to do this? Is it going to be utilization of Neuralink chips, in maybe 50 years' time or something? The dispersion of chips into the brains of different individuals to control them psychologically in that setting. Certainly there's going to be some element of technology there. Is it not going to be that? Is it going to be the investment in monetary investment, heavy monetary investment into AI technology, getting them up the ranks in business, getting them millions or billions and billions, making their AI products a certain way, certain regulations, etc., putting certain things in them that overcome certain regulations, that then get them into production with a certain functionality in them that actually will turn out to be negative. Will they then, because of their enhanced influence with money and business, etc., corrupt politics and buy their way in somehow and formulate things that way, then get up into power that way? Will they maybe take it a little bit more on the down low, a little bit different in other certain ways? There's many different ways that... Will they even utilize natural disasters to strike fear into people? For example, will they try and maybe formulate kind of not natural disasters, actually kind of programmed natural disasters to control the population from a psychological and kind of fear mongering type angle? There's a lot of kind of keeping the population in check if, let's say, there's kind of these mysterious goings on with natural disasters that the population are like, well, I don't know, this seems something like is going on here and all the rest of it. But yet they don't want to step out of line because they think that they're just going to get a knock on the door by some SAS guy with a knife or a gun that just shoots them dead. You see, so that's a good way to... Not a good way, but it's a way to do it, you know? So, I mean, there's many different ways you could go about it. And it's all about suppression of the population and getting people down, you know, like that. So it's you've got to be careful. You've got to try and sort this. Love how Adz said he wasn't going to talk much about Hitler. Half an hour later, still going, all right, yeah, but I just don't want to... You see, I don't have much... Oh yeah, politics has been corrupt. I'm not saying it isn't. I'm just saying maybe corrupt it even more by them getting in, you know, like by in a certain way, whatever that way. But God, yeah, of course, politics has been corrupt. No, but, you know, I don't like to talk about things that I don't have much knowledge on, and I don't have much knowledge on Hitler. I do talk about things that I don't have much knowledge on sometimes, and I let myself run away with it, and I don't like that because I then maybe might not say something that's completely factually accurate or what I would deem as at least intuitively or empirically accurate. But, you know, sometimes you get away with yourself and you get in that mode of thinking and you end up just having to talk about things and sometimes you can get a little bit maybe too much invested emotionally and then you're not being as rational or as intellectual as you could be with the things that you're dispensing. But I tried to, you know, with Hitler, I tried to stay on what I kind of know. And as far as I'm aware there, that is pretty damn accurate from what I've read of Jung and what I've watched some documentaries on Hitler. I've read a little bit of Hitler's Table Talk. I've read a little bit of bits of other bits on Hitler and stuff as well. And I've read bits of Jung on Hitler, and I've watched a lot of Peterson on Hitler as well. But other than that, I've not read anything else, you know. So I've not even read a biography of Hitler, you see. So I can't. I've read bits of his biography, but I've not read a book of his biography. Yeah, I think I've done okay there, but it would be good to read a bit more to then be able to stabilize myself with it. Adz, Matt B, you should watch the... Oh, maybe. Matt, I thought that was a name then. Matt B. Adz, maybe you should watch the series in YouTube called Europa. I will write that down, actually. I am going to have to go now because it's 10 o'clock. But thanks for sticking with me, guys. There was quite a few people who stuck with me then, actually, for quite a while. Hitler's Table Talk sounds like a very disturbing cooking show. No, so there was a guy, it was one of his assistants or something like that. Between 1942 and 1944, I believe, or it might have been 1939 and 1942. I'd have to double check. But between either one of those years, this assistant wrote down the kind of things that Hitler said. I think it was like over dinners, or if it wasn't over dinners, then it was over kind of like, you know, strategic planning meetings and stuff. But I think it was over like literally dinners that they had. And he wrote that he got permission off Hitler, and I think Hitler was kind of like just about okay with it or whatever. I believe he got permission off Hitler anyway. And he wrote down all of these conversations. And he wrote them down in a big long book. Well, big, you know, notebooks and all that. But it turned into a big long book. It's about 600 pages or something, 700 pages. I've not read it all, of course. Yeah, it's very interesting. Very interesting. As I say, I've not read it all. I've only read a bit of it. I've not read much of it at all. But what I read was very interesting. And you'll get there in that book more of a picture directly of, you know, Hitler, because it's from his conversations, you know. So that's an interesting one. But anyway, I will leave it. So yeah, I'll leave it there. I hope you enjoyed that very deep, very almost very shadowy ramble tonight. I was very living in the shadow today. The collective shadow more than the individual shadow, the personal shadow. But yeah, I'll leave it there. God, that's blurred. I look like a ghost there, don't I? So I'll leave it there. Thank you very much for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Got any comments or anything? Save them for next week. And yeah, I will see you soon. See you very soon, guys.